And joining us here on the Jay Stevens podcast, once again, he was on with us during the bubble when the Lakers, shortly after he was on the podcast, won the championship. Maybe he'll be good luck for Lakers fans, him being on the Jay Stevens podcast once again. Maybe at the end of this season, they'll win the championship again. It's Harrison Faigen, Lakers beat writer for SB Nation. Harrison, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. And, honestly, I hadn't thought about this stat before, but yeah, I guess the Lakers are undefeated in the finals in seasons when I go on your podcast. So we may have to keep this, if this keeps up, I think I'd be irresponsible not to, if I have that much power, if we together have that much power, we got to keep it rolling.
Got to keep it rolling. Got to keep this connection going and make sure LeBron is on the team as well, because it seems like him being there, it's just like the train keeps on rolling. Harrison, before we get into talk about last night's game against the Hawks and what happened there, for those people listening to this podcast, they weren't here last time, they didn't know anything about you, where can they connect with you via social media and also read some of your articles as well?
Yeah, so I'm, same place I always am. I'm at HM Faigen on HMFAIGEN on Twitter, and Silver Screen and Roll is where I podcast. It's where I occasionally do video stuff, but not that often this year. It's where I do all of my writing, which is the majority of my professional output. So I've been writing about this Hawks game and some of the things that happened in it. So for the last 12 to 24 hours or so. So I'm sure that we will have more craziness tomorrow, because that's just the kind of season it's been.
Absolutely. I look at your Twitter feed right now. Last time you were here, it was Playoff Faigen. That was your name over there. Now it's just Harrison Faigen. What part of the season will you go back to change and have some type of creativity with your name on Twitter?
Generally, it just varies on if there was something that amused me that I want to allude to in current events. I think a couple weeks ago, I was Aggregation Nation Harrison Faigen, because some journalists got really mad at bloggers and started calling us Aggregation Nation, I guess. And then, right now my bio is not very professional at all, but someone on Celtics Twitter called me, am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Go ahead.
Yeah, they said that Harrison was doing performance art for dumbasses. And so that
wow.
Literally, right. I thought it was hilarious, honestly. And so that is just what my bio says, is just performance art for dumbasses, which I think, sometimes can't, especially in the last 24 hours, really has described my work. And so, it ended up being really kind of serendipitous and the coincidence there.
Yeah, it did, Harrison. I was going to ask a different question, but everybody knows about what happened.
I think there's only one way you could start a Lakers podcast right now.
I don't know how to even go about asking a question or even describing what happened. A couple ladies there on the front row started drawing. Courtside Karen was nicknamed, and you get the pleasure of writing about it.
Yeah, so last night during the game, there was an exchange with LeBron and a couple fans. It was so I initially thought the same thing as you. I'm like, why are those two women just yelling at LeBron? But it turned out that right before that, LeBron had been having a back and forth with one of the women's husband. And so she got upset. And basically, I think she admitted that she said that she told LeBron that she would F him up, but she didn't say F. And
okay, yeah, I see.
And LeBron said that he basically didn't think that it was anything after the game. He didn't think that they deserved to be ejected, but he understood why the refs did it. He thought that maybe they had some alcohol in them and, they were trying to avoid some kind of courtside situation that could have escalated and gotten worse. But yeah, she was upset. She claimed that LeBron told her husband to shut up. He said that he was just having an exchange with the fan. I'm pretty sure that on one of the videos, you can hear him telling the man to shut up, but we also don't know what this guy was yelling to make LeBron say that. And I'm guessing it was not, innocent or G-rated. And so, she apparently then told 6'9" LeBron that she would beat his ass. And if you do that, it turns out right in front of referees while taking your mask down to scream it at him during a pandemic, you're probably going to get kicked out of an NBA game. I don't feel like that's that unexpected of an outcome, but apparently for her, it was very unexpected, as she was in complete disbelief that she had been thrown out for this, which makes me wonder, what does she normally yell at players that made her think that this was she's like, what? She's like, I just yelled at Solomon Hill that I would beat his ass last week and you didn't kick me out. I don't know. What is she normally screaming at players that made her think that this was just chill, that she could do it? But yeah, just kind of a whole crazy thing, but I guess no bans to come out of it. I guess courtside money talks. And, the Hawks, they're probably, I would imagine, somewhat limited people willing to pay courtside prices for Hawks games in regular years, and especially during a pandemic, that is probably even more the case. So, look, everyone's just trying to keep their revenue streams going.
I'm right. Yeah, they are. And I know LeBron, he came out and said that he was happy that there were fans back in the stands and he's able to have the back and forth. I know he gets that. Of course, if any of us were on the court, no, we're not athletes, professional athletes can't be there. But if we were, we would probably say something back as well. But I do know fans, yeah, you're back in the stadium, and I would love to see full stands, but completely understand why we're not seeing them. But at some point, you got to realize there's a line you cannot cross. And if you cross that line, you may get kicked out. And this year, the restrictions and what people can say may be less because of what's going on in our country. And I've heard Courtside Karen. Before I heard about Courtside Karen being her nickname, I heard she's auditioning for the Real Housewives of Atlanta or ATL. So I've heard that too.
I think a lot of people just assumed that based on her behavior. I'm not sure that that's something that's actually out there. But look, like, I'm not going to say that she wasn't doing that. Like, look, all I'm saying is if she gets like a podcast or like, some kind of like reality TV show press release in a couple days, like, I won't be shocked.
No, I wouldn't be either, man. I mean, this is what we live for. Like, as fans, when I play pickup basketball, I love talking trash. If there's somebody's on the sidelines that's talking to me, I'll talk trash back at them. The back and forth, I like it. I know LeBron James enjoys it. And it actually gives us something else to talk about that makes basketball seem a little bit more normal than it is right now. After last night's game, how would you describe the way the Lakers played in the matchup against the Hawks?
I think that I'd say mostly disinterested. Like, they were clearly not operating at peak form last year, and they haven't been for a lot of this year, but like, they do show the flashes where they remind you, they're like, okay, like, yeah, this team is really good. Like last night in the fourth quarter, after Courtside Karen said her piece, the Lakers went off. They went on, like, heading into the fourth quarter, I think they went on like 16-0 run or something like that, and ended up just snatching that game from the Hawks. And so if there's one thing that I think that, like, we can kind of learn from this, it's that, beyond just common sense or human decency or like the rules in place to keep you from getting kicked out of your courtside seats, like, just in self-interest, if you want your team to win, you should not be pissing off LeBron during games, because I went and I looked this up. And so, like, there was earlier on this road trip, LeBron kind of got into it with a Cavaliers executive. I believe it was that he was later identified as Jason Hillman. I think he's a scout.
I saw that. He was sitting courtside, right?
Yeah, he celebrated too loudly when LeBron missed a shot. And you see LeBron kind of look over at him and give him like this, okay. And then LeBron came in, and I think he scored 24 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. Like, he took it personally. And now on the season after that, LeBron is averaging in these two games where courtside fans have given him courtside people have given him some motivation. He is averaging 16.5 points in the fourth quarter on 75% shooting. So, like, just beyond all the other reasons that I listed that you should not want to piss off LeBron, just like if you want your team to win, like in all other games, he's averaging 6.8 points on 42.5% shooting in the fourth, which is like that's also like, that's not bad. It's just a quarter, like, but he's averaging basically almost a game's worth of scoring in the fourth when teams piss him off. And so, like, I would just say, to anyone thinking like, hey, maybe it's a good idea for me to threaten to kick LeBron's ass, for all the other reasons that's a bad idea, just in self-interest, like, you probably shouldn't do it at an NBA game, or really you shouldn't do it anytime, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the great ones, when they're out there playing basketball, they do find a way to find different ways to motivate themselves. We heard about Michael Jordan during The Last Dance. We've all heard stories of Kobe Bryant. And if you go back to Magic and Bird, they would find different ways to motivate themselves to score more and play harder. LeBron James is one. He'll talk about it afterwards, and we'll see it now with social media and all the cameras. If you do something to piss him off, watch out for what happens next, because you probably won't like it. I've actually heard, Harrison, interesting you used the word disinterested, because about a month ago, I was talking to a Miami Heat fan, and I was just asking him general questions. How's the team season going? What are your thoughts about the team? And he described the Lakers as a team that is kind of sleepwalking or playing like they're disinterested in this season, because they know how good they are, almost in a way that they are pacing themselves. Would you say that's a good assessment of how this team has played from the beginning up until this point in the season?
Yeah, it's interesting that a Heat fan would say that, because that's a team that I've been keeping an eye on too, just because they are really like, I mean, it's not a perfect comparison because they obviously, we saw in the finals last year, they aren't as good as the Lakers. They've had injury and COVID issues and whatever. So there are other factors in why they've underwhelmed this season. But they are a team that I've been keeping an eye on, just of like, okay, where's a baseline of what we should expect from a team that went through this like 73, I think, day turnaround that only the Lakers and Heat went through, because everybody else got eliminated at least like 2 weeks before that. And so, but obviously the Nuggets and like the Celtics are going through like a similar kind of short turnaround. And then you go back to the second round of the playoffs and those teams are too, but there are a lot of teams that aren't going through that. And so I've kind of been, just the fact that the Lakers have been able to play as well as they have while also kind of sleepwalking. Well, and then you look at the Heat, and again, like all that context aside, like they have not been good this year. And some of that has to be from the fatigue factor and all of that. So just, even if the Lakers look disinterested at times, even if there are times where, we were just doing our podcast and we were talking about how a lot of the times it seems like this team will kind of just look at a team and be like, well, how hard do we have to, like, how long in this game do we have to try to beat them? Like, do we need a quarter? Do we need a quarter and a half? Like against the Bulls, it was like we needed 2 quarters, and like against some team it's 3. And, there have been times like their game against the Warriors where that came back to bite them and they ended up losing down the stretch, against the Pistons where they just didn't turn it on enough late, because they were tired on the second night of that back-to-back, against Philly where like they probably could have played a lot better but didn't. And again, like Philly is the outlier there where like they really deserved to win that game and played hard throughout it, and the Lakers, should have played harder, but still Philly earned that. But all of this is to say that the Lakers right now are very clearly like not operating at like their top level of effort, for entire games very often, if at all. Like even against the Celtics, like I thought that they played probably with the most energy they had on the road trip. But even then, like, there were a couple of possessions, couple of sequences where they were sleepwalking and kind of just going through the motions. And you can tell that they're kind of playing with their food a little bit, is how I think that we've referred to it a lot. So, like, look, and that's to be expected with how short of an offseason they went through and, how many veterans are on this team. But the thing, like when Lakers fans are freaking out after games or whatever, the thing that I always tell them is like, yes, they want to win these games. But if you look at Frank Vogel's rotations, like you look at some of the lineups that they're throwing out there, some of the actions they're running, how they almost never adjust their game plan based on what opponent they're playing. They're very clearly just trying to build a sample size. And they've admitted that they're essentially treating these games as practices. Like LeBron has said that, Kuz has said that, Frank has begrudgingly admitted that. And so like, I think that they are very much like they aren't at the top of their game right now. And which is kind of scary for the rest of the league because they've still managed to have the best defense in the NBA and assemble one of the best records.
Very scary. Speaking of records, best records, not best records overall, 16-6, but they have managed to be 12-2 in road games. Now, I did go back and look at them. I think they're on a 7-game road. They just ended a 7-game road trip right now, but they've had some extended road trips already. 12-2 on the road for those teams in the Western Conference. We've already kind of talked about it and highlighted. Yeah, they may be kind of sleepwalking. You're treating these like practice, but come playoff time, the Lakers, they're better on the road than they are in Staples Center.
Yeah, they were 10-0 on the road until the loss to the Sixers, and that came on a game winner, like right at the end. And after like a furious comeback where they almost won it, and then ended up just like letting one too many shots go in, basically. And and then they lost to the Pistons, so those are their 2 losses on the second night of a back-to-back. And then they win their next 2 games. So yeah, like 12-2 on the road is really, really good. And my theory on this, and like talking to the players, I think and listening to what they say and kind of reading between the lines sometimes of some of their answers, my takeaway on this is that like the road kind of sucks and it can be mentally draining, but there's literally nothing they can do. And so like in a normal year, the reason that teams lose, like the reason that the Lakers, even during down years, usually have a home court advantage, or at least part of it, is that it's really fun to go out in LA, like during a non-pandemic and stuff like that. And when the Lakers are on the road, like normally that's the time when they'd be going out for team dinners, they'd be going out for team other excursions and, whatever. And so like sometimes maybe if you have a late night, that ends up leading to like a bad game the next game. And like, I think that now it's like, if you can't leave your hotel room, like, what are you going to do? You're just going to go to bed early. You're going to wake up. You're going to take your COVID test. You're going to take a pregame nap. Like, you don't have any kids to bother you, like nothing. Whereas like think about right now, any of us that are home and live with other people. I don't know if you have a wife, girlfriend, significant other of any kind. Like,
Nothing.
okay, well, so it's a little different than for you, but like for me, like, you know, I love my wife, but when you're at home, like constantly with someone a lot of the time, like there are times where, you know, like she's going to get annoyed with me. I'm going to get annoyed with her. Like, you know, you're like, I'm sure for a lot of these guys, they have kids, their kids are going to drive them crazy. From me talking to my friends who are parents and, you know, have kids, like they're losing their minds a little bit during this whole like year. And so I'm sure it's not any different for players. And so like, there are a lot of mental stresses and like, you know, I'm sure they miss their families when they're on the road and stuff like that, but there's just less things that you're having to manage if you're just basically, you know, put in a hyperbaric chamber when you're not playing the games. Like you're just put in a hotel room and you can't do anything. So like, I think that we're basically seeing like, how good could NBA teams play if they just did not have to do anything but literally play basketball?
They can play very, very well, and just playing just the basketball. I know when I do podcasts, I host a couple of them. Mentally, with via Zoom, it takes a whole lot of mental focus just to do what we're doing right now. When you don't have other things going on with you, you can focus more of your energy to mentally being prepared, watching more film, and being more relaxed on the basketball court. And even though the Lakers may be sleepwalking, they do seem very, very comfortable with the new pieces that are there, acclimating them into the team. And from Dennis Schroeder to Montrezl Harrell to Marc Gasol, it seems like everybody's fitting in very well with the Lakers group that's playing this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there have been, obviously, as you would expect, like some level of growing pains with some of these guys. But yeah, like for all the, like Mark has become kind of, I think, like a fan favorite punching bag at times because look, like he's big, he's a little slow. Like when he gets blown by for a layup, you notice, you know, like whereas like maybe like if JaVale McGee got scored on, it's like, well, he was right there. They just made a difficult shot. Whereas like if Mark gets blown by a guard, it's like, oh, he's like 3 steps behind him now. So like when it looks bad, it looks bad. But the Lakers, like they have the best defense in the league. I think it looks different. There's less shot blocking. It's less imposing physically, like, but you know, they've still been really good. And like, you know, like, look, Wes Matthews has been out of the rotation the last 2 games. That's another new addition who like, he's had games where he hits like 7 threes and has looked great. And then there are games where he's not hitting his shots where he doesn't offer a lot of utility. And so they've been kind of experimenting with what that looks like. They've been integrating Talen Horton-Tucker, who's not a new player, but is new to the rotation. He only played like 5 minutes pre-bubble last year. And so like they're just integrating a lot of new pieces. And I think that there have been, that's part of like the sleepwalking and whatever, right? Is like, if you have a lot of chemistry with guys, like we see this in a lot of some of the lineups with the returners that were together last year. It's like, you know, everyone knows where they're supposed to be. Everyone knows who's going to pass to who's going to pass where, whatever. Whereas when you're getting new guys ready, you're going to be like a step slow. And that's part of the natural kind of like, you know, practicing and evolving and getting better process. But yeah, like so far, you know, they're better when Mark is on the floor than they are with him off. Their starters have been amazing, like in terms of net rating, and you know, they're just like blowing teams out with that group on the floor. Schroeder is a guy who I haven't even talked about yet, might have been their biggest offseason addition. And like, look, he started out the season like gangbusters. He's been a little slower of late, but what stayed kind of consistent is his defensive effort. And like, they really like his speed and disruptiveness on that end. He's definitely better than my impression of him was from afar, like on that end. And I think that they've somewhat put him in positions to succeed. And there have been games where he hasn't been good, but there have been games when all the Lakers haven't been good. So yeah, like the new additions, you know, I've really, it's kind of added a new energy to the season. It's been more of a fun puzzle, I think, to watch being put together than it would have been if they had just run things back. And it was like, yeah, we know how good these guys can be. We know what they all do well. Whereas now it's like, there are things to watch for. It's like, how is THT fitting in? What's Schroeder doing out on the court? Like, what's up with Wes Matthews? Like, how is Marc Gasol? All these things. There's new questions to be answered, which is kind of fun.
If you were to pick one newcomer that may be your favorite to watch, maybe a little bit of a scary question, or maybe not supposed to be unbiased, but if between the guys that are newcomers there, not say new additions to the team, I know Horton-Tucker was there but didn't play much. New additions, who is your favorite to watch in the cover?
So can we count THT?
Go for it. You brought him up earlier.
Well,
Go for it.
Then it's definitely THT because, like, even though again he was around last year, I talked to him before, like, all this stuff. Like, it's been fun getting to know his personality a little bit better, and it's been fun just watching him play. Like, one of my favorite things, and if you watch Lakers games, you should look for this, is like watch him without the ball, because it's like a newly housebroken puppy that kind of doesn't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
He literally holds his hands up almost the entire possession, waiting for a pass and things like that, and still moves like, he's kind of learning where he's supposed to be and all that stuff, but there's just an eagerness to like, okay, I'm open, LeBron, are you going to pass it to me? And it's like the little like kind of disappointment when LeBron James does not, decides that one of his shots is a better idea than Talen Horton-Tucker. But, and like his arms are so ridiculously long that watching him try to finish around the rim is like an adventure in and of itself. Like, he's great at getting there. He's not always great at putting the ball in the basket. Once he is, like, he'll sometimes overextend himself, like past the rim and overshoot it and stuff like that. So he's really fun to watch. In terms of like the guys that they signed or brought in this offseason, it's Schroeder. Like, I really enjoy his intensity kind of on defense. I enjoy his speed. I enjoy that he really he seems to care about every game in a way that not every single guy on this team does. Like, justifiably, they're recovering from a short turnaround, but he really seems to have a chip on his shoulder and want to go prove that he can be a part of this mix. So like, even when it's not working, he keeps playing. He keeps playing hard on defense. He doesn't let his shot not falling impact his effort. He's trying to make an impact. And like, he gets mad when he's not making shots and stuff like that. And it's just fun to watch a guy who really cares.
It is. Alex Caruso, I'll end it with this question on this player. What makes him so impactful with the way that he impacts the offensive end and defensive end for this Lakers team?
So I think that it's almost like he's just a guy that, and again, I'm basically drink every time I use a cliche here, but he's a guy who understands where he's supposed to be on the floor. He understands, I think, in a way that is not always easy. Like, this sounds like an easy thing, but it's not. Like, because most NBA players, like, look, growing up, they're all the best players on their teams. And so there's always an adjustment period when it comes to like, okay, actually, you're a role player now. Whereas Alex Caruso, I felt like never really had that. And I don't know if it was because, like, I don't know if there were better players on his college teams or his high school teams or whatever, but he is sort of a force multiplier is the way that Pete, Laker Film Room, likes to describe it. And I think it's the best way to describe him is he's a guy who, like, we all talk about his net rating and whatever, and like all this stuff, like, oh, he's a star. Like, he's a star in his role. And he's kind of the definition of that, where he's a guy that he's really good at making really, really good players look better and doing the things that help him look good alongside good players. But he's also not a guy that, like, you're ever going to give the ball to and have him go create 10, 15 shots for his team, unless you're in, just a really bad position with injuries or something like that. And like, I think he just uniquely understands his role. He hustles really hard. He knows how to space the floor, how to move around, how to make himself available within, like, for LeBron's passes within offense. Like, and on defense, he just plays really, really hard, and he knows how to he knows how to beat guys to his spots. He's irritating. He's deceptively strong. And so, like, he just does a lot of things. The best example of this, and, is against the Celtics, was the last play of the game. Jaylen Brown's running down, would have had a game-winning dunk if Alex Caruso doesn't sprint full speed down the court, chase Jaylen Brown, like, down, catch him despite starting behind him, and, like, kind of break up that play to force the Celtics into what was much worse shot. That's basically a game-winning defensive play. And, like, he just does little stuff like that really makes a difference.
He does consistently. I know you have hashtag Lake Show. I know a lot of Lakers fans will say Alex Caruso with an SHOW at the end of his name. He's fun to watch. And as someone from the outside looking in that doesn't really follow the Lakers game by game by game, he's a player that is very, very easy to enjoy watching him play, and he could easily be a fan favorite. Harrison, this has been fun. Do you have any lasting comments about this Lakers team, looking forward, how they played so far? Anything else we haven't covered that you want to drop and just leave us with?
No, I mean, I think the main thing to know about this Lakers team is, like, while, yes, they sleepwalk at times, like, they're still really, really good. And so if their record does start to tail off at some point here, like, just remember that, like, let's not discount them because of that, or start to talk about, like, that they're not the title favorites or something, or, like, let us trick ourselves into overthinking this. Like, they are right now the best team in the NBA. They could be beaten, but, like, we've seen that when they have it rolling, like, I'm just not sure that anyone can stop them in a 7-game series. I really don't think so.
A lot of Brooklyn Nets fans would say, "Oh, well, we can beat the Lakers." I don't think the Nets defense is
Yeah,
up
let me
and
see
can
them sign
hang
like
up.
a center that can play in the NBA in 2021. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with the Nets.
I'm right there with you, man. Harrison, this has been fun. If you could once again let people know where they can connect with you via social media, then where they can also read a lot of your work as well.
Yeah, so just like I said at the beginning of the show, just check out silverscreenandroll.com. And I'm on Twitter at HMFAIGEN, at HMFaigen. And, as Jay said, I change my name sometimes, but, the at is always the same.
That is true. Harrison Faigen, thanks so much for coming back on the Jay Stevens Podcast. Lakers, they're a lot of fun to watch. A lot of the season is left. Possibility of an All-Star game, not sure, but looking forward to watching the Lakers, especially when the playoffs start, to see how they turn up the heat on their opponents. Harrison, thank you so much for coming back on the Jay Stevens Podcast.
Happy to do it anytime, man.